This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shayne Brian. From the pop explosion of Zoot to the global success of Little River Band and a solo career that explored identity, faith, and creativity beyond the spotlight, Beeb Birtles has lived one of the great Australian music stories. As a member of Zoot, Beeb helped define a generation of Australian pop alongside names like Rick Springfield, Darryl, creating music and moments that still resonate 60 years on. Then came Little River Band, where Beeb became one of the key creative voices behind songs, including the band's very first single, Curiosity Killed the Cat, along with favourites like Every Day of My Life, Home on a Monday, and Happy Anniversary, helping establish Little River Band as one of Australia's most successful exports and a defining part of what the world, and he's probably going to hate me for saying this, of what the world now calls yacht rock. Let's not go there yet. And now, as Zoot celebrates its 60th anniversary, we take a look back at the remarkable journey through Australian music history, from Australian music pop hysteria and international success to songwriting, spirituality, reinvention, and the search for meaning behind the music. Beeb Birtles, welcome to Long Way to the Top. How are you?
I'm good. Good to meet you, Shayne.
Likewise. Now, let's just clear the air. Yacht rock. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but you guys really were a pioneer in America during those days, and so I guess you kind of got labeled with that, soft rock label, yeah?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, some people called it middle of the road kind of music.
Yeah.
We were on the softer side of music for sure because of our songs, I think, more than anything, and the melodies that went along with those songs, and then of course the signature harmonies.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to cover a lot today. Let's, before we get into Zoot, the where it all started. You were born Jared Birtlecamp before the world came to know you as Beeb Birtles. What was the story behind the name change? Was it simply creating a stage identity?
No, I got the nickname Beeb in high school from a cartoon series that was on TV at that time. It was called the Dick Tracy Show, and it had all these different characters in it, like Mumbles and Prune Face and Carrot Head, and one of the characters was called BB Eyes. And for some unknown reason, my friends in high school started calling me BB Eyes, which was very quickly shortened to BB. So all through my high school years, I was called that. And it wasn't until Darryl Cotton shortened that to Beeb, when I was already playing music, that became my nickname.
Yeah.
And then I took my surname, which is actually Birtlecamp. I took the first part of that name and kind of anglicized it, and to come up with Birtles, and it just became my name ever since.
Yeah, it stuck. Do you even find your friends and family are calling you Beeb?
I was just about to say to you that even my own mother never called me Gerard. I was always Beeb,
Yeah.
It's kind of unusual.
Now, it's a very important period right now because it is 60 years of Zoot. Now, when you hear that number, what's the first image or memory that comes flooding back to you?
Probably those days in high school when I met my good friend John Darcy, who was an English migrant who had emigrated with his family from Manchester in England to Adelaide. And I met him in my second year of Plimpton High School, and we just really bonded over music. And he was a mad Hollies fan because of the Hollies coming from Manchester. And he really was the one who introduced me to singing harmonies and loving music. In a kind of way that he awakened the passion for music in me.
Yeah. And you're talking about harmonies. I mean, that was one of the big things about Zoot. There was incredible harmonies, but there was also an incredible chemistry within the band as well from the very beginning.
Yes, there was. And I think that probably stemmed from the fact that we were huge fans of The Who
Mm.
and, bands like The Who, The Animals to a certain degree, The Kinks,
Yep.
all of those British invasion bands that first came along. Of course, The Who were, it wasn't just their music, but all of those guys sang as well, which was
Yes.
what was great about them. We played a lot of Who songs in our set when
Yeah.
we first started in Adelaide.
It was a big thing though. Even looking back at the Beatles, they all had a go at singing, and I think that's
Yeah,
kind of missing a lot in sort of newer bands.
yeah, and well, I don't know about the newer bands. I don't really um, follow bands these days much anymore because it's a new
Yeah,
generation now,
it is.
But yeah, I mean, when you think, speaking of the Beatles, I mean, when they went to Hamburg to play the clubs for all those years, they did a lot of covers too. It wasn't
Yeah,
just their origin. They probably mostly played covers,
yeah,
and Zoot got started the same way. We played covers until we evolved more later on with the addition of Rick Springfield in the lineup,
mm,
and then started to play more original music, which was
yeah,
great for us.
yeah,
So we kind of we were lucky because we were able to move with the times.
yeah, yeah. But there was one cover though that to this day, and I'm probably going to annoy every Beatles fan out there. Eleanor Rigby, I personally think that is the better version that Zoot did.
Well, yeah, and I see to this day, I see so many people commenting on our version of that record,
Mm,
um, and it was, well, it's part of a pop music history now for
mm,
sure in Australia for sure. Um, yeah, the thing was we used to take songs like that. Eleanor Rigby.
mm.
We did Hello Goodbye. We did I'm
Yeah,
Only Sleeping. And it was around that time in the late 60s when, music was starting to take on a harder edge with bands like Black Sabbath and
mm,
Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin coming along. And we just, as a four-piece band, we thought to ourselves, if we don't start getting creative and doing our own thing with these songs, we're going to get left behind.
yeah,
And so that's how we came up with the arrangement to Eleanor Rigby and many other songs as well, from artists who were popular
mm,
at that particular time on the charts.
And I was talking to Leo Sayer the other day, and he recently put out his own version of Eleanor Rigby, and he even said that he prefers the Zoot version because it just added a lot more depth to it. And I mean, let's face it, it really rocked, right?
It did.
It did. It
Sure did.
did.
And that was Springfield, because
Yeah.
he had that harder kind of edge to him when it came to playing his guitar. He was a showman. He still
Yeah.
is a showman, and he brought that element to Zoot probably at a time when the band really needed it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is for sure. Now, let's go back one step. Before Zoot,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were down the line and you were working as a studio band for John Farnham in the earlier days.
Yes. Well, actually, we started off. When you think about this year being the 60th anniversary of Zoot, I have to explain that there were 2 years before 66
Mm,
that we started out as a band called Times Unlimited. And that was that
right.
band that I first formed with my friend John Darcy. So for 2 years, we went through being, we were called Down the Line. And then when Darryl Cotton joined the band, we decided to change our name to Down the Line. And that's
Yes.
where your story comes in,
Yes,
because
correct.
we were just playing back in those days, they were just dances around Adelaide. And
Yeah.
we were playing all the various dances. And John Farnham came across from Melbourne with his manager. His manager lived in Adelaide, actually,
Mm,
Darryl Samble.
yeah.
And we got to be the backing band for his one of his first demos that he recorded, which was a Gene Pitney song called Half Heaven, Half Heartache. And one of John's original songs was the B-side, a song called In My Room. And Zoot were the backing band for those two recordings.
Yeah, wow. And you know, you look back now, and they were really that was the start of the whole John Farnham era.
It was.
Yeah.
It was because David Mackay, who was EMI's in-house producer during those days, flew from Sydney to Adelaide specifically to record those demos. And you know, it's from that demo, John got his recording contract.
Yeah. Now, being in Adelaide, you know, there were a lot of bands that came out of Adelaide, and it seemed to be a real melting pot of creativity. And it was no surprise that, according to the story, as it goes, that the name Zoot actually came from a suggestion by Doc Neeson from the Angels.
That's correct. Before he even started in music, he and his business partner, they were really booking bands for to play at the Octagon in Elizabeth, and we went and auditioned for them at a place called Beat Basement, which was in Rundle Street in Adelaide. Those guys really liked us. They said to us, look, we really like your band. We'd like to book you, but, you know, we don't like your name. And it was Doc Neeson who suggested, why don't you call yourself something like Zoot, you know, like a word that really doesn't mean anything, you know. And it came from his admiration of the English band Zoot Money's Big Roll Band.
Yeah, right.
And so he threw that out there, and you know, we thought it was weird at first. We kicked it around for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then decided, yeah, it is kind of a cool name. So, and this is what brings me to the whole 60th anniversary thing, was because it was in '66 that we took on the name Zoot.
Yes. And I know that was a hard sort of time for you to get your head around. Should we call it Zoot? I imagine another hard thing to get your head around was, let's go with pink suits, right?
Oh yeah. Well, that came a little bit later on, of course, when we were when we'd outdone our rounds in Adelaide, so to speak. When we felt that there was nowhere else to go in Adelaide, we decided to move to Melbourne, and we had a couple of different managers come over from Melbourne to check us out. And one of them was a guy called Wayne DeGrucci, who was in partnership with a man called Tony Knight, who was the owner of Bertie's in Melbourne, which was a discotheque at that time. And those two guys came up with the concept of Think Pink, Think Zoot, and decided that they were going to make us, you know, teen idols around Australia by dressing us in nothing but pink clothes. And which is what we agreed to at the time, to do that. So, but it kind of, you know, put a definite division between the girls who loved us and the guys who hated us for wearing pink, you know.
I mean, I guess it goes without saying that any band around that time was looking for that theatrical edge to their image, right?
Yeah.
You know, it must have been hard being sort of young musicians trying to carve out an identity in the 60s and the early 70s.
It was, you know, and not to blow my own trumpet, but the Zoot kind of set a trend, because once people saw us wearing our pink clothes, all these other bands like the Valentines started wearing all orange, and you know, the Daisy Clover was known for wearing green outfits, and so there was a real, you know, we created a real trend there. But the big thing for us, the big change, was that in those days in Melbourne, you would get these bands who would play all night from 8 till 12, or say from 8 till 11, you know, and they would do every set. But Wayne DeGrucci was such a visionary that he said to the promoters, yes, you can book Zoot, but you can only book them for 40-minute spots. And so
Right.
we would get on stage at a dance in Melbourne, play our set for 40 minutes, and finished and got out of there and went to the next gig.
Mm.
And this created such a frenzy with the young girls that they wanted to see more of us. And so they'd follow us from gig to gig,
Yeah.
and that's what created this whole, what do you call, hysteria thing about
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And what
Plus,
there really was too. I mean, it was a very almost a Beatlesque sort of hysteria around Zoot.
yeah, that happened. And it hadn't really been seen since probably the Easy Beats,
Yeah.
who were a few years earlier than us, and but it did create that hysteria and the fact that we were seen on TV every week. First through Uptight, through the ABC station that was going at that time, and later on there were shows like Sounds and
Yeah.
Donny Sutherland show also.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got to be seen in Australian households just about every week, and so we were able to create this amazing following.
What was the point where you decided, well, we're not going to do the covers anymore. We're going to start doing our own original material?
Well, that really started when Rick Springfield joined the band, because his original songs started to creep into our set. Plus, at the same time, we were doing these heavier versions of the popular songs of the day, and so that's how that came about.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty well, I wouldn't say that it was, that we did that thing on purpose. It just kind of happened,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a planned out thing. It just, we were wanting to, well, first of all, we were wanting to be taken more seriously as musicians after the whole Think Pink, Think Zoot thing. And that kind of went hand in hand with us doing these arrangements of songs and making them, playing them with coming up with heavier arrangements, as well as the fact that Rick's original songs were starting to creep into the set.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, Rick went on to huge international success back then, as you guys did with Little River Band. But back then, could you already sort of sense that ambition and drive with Rick?
As far as Zoot is concerned,
as far as his desire for greater success.
Yeah, because Rick was probably not in the band he was only in the band for maybe 2 years at the most, and we sensed it towards the end days of Zoot. He was starting to grow a little unhappy with what was happening, and maybe in the back of his mind, he'd already decided that he was going to go solo or he was going to go overseas. And Zoot really was the platform for him doing that, because of the fact that, after Eleanor Rigby, that we only had one other single, which was called The Freak, which was a Springfield original. And funnily that we're talking about Eleanor Rigby this way, but because our manager at the time was trying to get Eleanor Rigby released overseas, and we got some interest from RCA in America, and but the managing director of EMI Australia would not release us from our recording contract to free us up to be able to do that, and that brought about the demise of the band. And it wasn't anything that anybody said. We just amicably said, look, I don't think we're going to do much more here in Australia. Let's just break up. And
Which
that's
is
how
sad.
it happened.
I mean, this is where especially in those days, the record labels could have actually gone, well, this is actually going to be a bigger benefit to us because it's going to make you bigger overseas and ultimately bigger in Australia.
Which was precisely the case that happened with Little River Band,
Yeah.
because the managing director of EMI allowed us out of our contract to be able to sign directly to Capitol in the States.
Yeah.
So that was a smart move on his part. And
Yeah.
to this day, EMI Australia are still making money off our first 2 albums, talking about Little River Band now.
Yeah.
Because, you know, our albums, our music still keeps selling to this day.
Yeah. Smart move. Well, when you
Yeah.
look back now, what do you think Zoot contributed to Australian music that perhaps people tend to overlook? Is there a legacy?
I think there's a legacy in the records that we made, for sure.
Yeah.
I've got an active Zoot Facebook page,
Yes.
and that has about, you know, approaching 4,000 members.
Yeah.
And the thing is about that page, that the thing that I love the most is that it's bringing so much joy to people when I post, because I'm one of these people who has an incredible amount of memorabilia that I've kept over the years.
Yeah.
And whenever I post a certain photo or a story out of Go Set or whatever it might be, the comments, it's so rewarding to read the comments, and how much, you know, the memories that it takes people back to of growing up in the 60s. And I think maybe that's the legacy of the band, you know, that Zoot leaves behind.
Yeah. And in fact, it was that page that you know led us to having this discussion. You know, seeing the 60th anniversary sort of posts, and I'm like, well, we need to give Zoot, you know, the recognition that they deserve, because they were part of a big part of Australian music history. And I don't know about you, but I personally think that we tend to not celebrate our own history enough.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree.
You know?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to explain to your listeners, when it dawned on me that this was the 60th anniversary year of Zoot, I decided to make a weekly post. I'm going to try and keep this up for the 52 weeks of the year, of just little Zoot stories as we progress through the length of Zoot's career.
Yeah.
And these are the things that so many people are commenting on currently, you know.
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's talk about after Zoot ended. You know, was there a period where you kind of questioned what was going to come next, creatively or personally, after that?
You know, for me personally, because I was the bass player in Zoot, I had this epiphany where I thought to myself, you know, you're not really progressing on this instrument.
Yeah.
And so I decided to stop playing bass, and I picked up a 6-string guitar and started teaching myself chords, how to play chords, because I wasn't a guitarist.
Yeah.
And when I was discovering these chords, I started to hear melodies in my head accompanying those chords. And that's what first got me into writing songs. So for the year that Darryl Cotton and I were in a duo called Freeze, those were my very early songwriting days.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't anything like the reason for forming Freeze for Darryl and myself was that the Zoot days were, we didn't make much money at all. We barely made money to stay alive and pay our rent and, you know, buy our cars, kind of thing. And the opportunity to form Freeze meant that we were sponsored by this suit manufacturer out of Melbourne.
Right.
And they bought us a station wagon and a tape recorder for our backing tracks, and we had steady money for the first time in our lives. This is after, you know, well, by then I had been in Zoot probably 5 to 6 years, and never really made much money. But I kept doing it because I just loved it, you know.
Yeah.
So that was mainly the main thing for that year in Freeze before I joined Mississippi. Um, it gave us some stability.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And did it? I guess the formation of the band, and and joining Mississippi, and then Little River Band, did that change your outlook on music and songwriting? I mean, it was a big change from Zoot.
Um, well, the songwriting thing was so new to me that
Mm.
it quickly became my passion.
Yeah.
To come up with different songs. And Darryl Cotton and I had written a one song called "Little Roland Lost," which is actually the B side to "Monty and Me," which is one of our singles.
Right.
And so that was my first ever recorded song, which was fantastic. Um, and then in in the Freeze year, we recorded an album for Warner Brothers, and it was called 1972 BC. And Darryl and I contributed our first original songs to that album. That album was actually produced by Brian Cadd,
Right.
and
Wow.
yeah,
Still
yeah, and
available?
it's still around as far as I know,
Yeah.
probably only as a download.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for me to hear now because those were my very early songs, and I still like a lot of those songs,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
surprises me. I mean, I've written, I wouldn't say that I'm very, very prolific, but probably throughout my career, I've written between 500 and 600 songs.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's pretty
so
prolific. Yeah. That's more than a lot of people. I mean, you wrote "Curiosity Killed the Cat," and it was the very
yeah,
first Little River Band single. So,
yeah.
I mean, do you feel like the band had already, sort of gotten its unique identity at that point? And hey, here we are. Curiosity killed the cat. I mean, that really defined Little River Band right from the start.
Yeah, it did. Probably that, It's a Long Way There is more the defining song for the
Yeah.
band, if anything, because we, Graham, Derek, and I had been playing that song for 3 years in Mississippi
Yeah.
without ever
Right.
recording it. And
Right.
but yeah, and I had written Curiosity when we went to London with the band. I'd written it over there. But it was a surprise to me, to be honest,
Mm.
because we always allowed EMI Records to pick the singles of our
Yeah.
albums because we wrote such a variety of different songs that what did we know? I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't think you know every songwriter thinks his latest song is a hit. Uh, but of course, that's not the way. And so EMI Records picked Curiosity to be our first single, and it immediately went top 10 in Australia, which was
Yeah.
great.
And you
Yeah,
literally wrote it about a cat.
I did. I did. I've always been a lover of proverbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had this cat in England, or actually Graham and his wife at the time had a cat, and the cat's name was Sparky. And when I was sitting in the lounge room of that house, the cat was, like cats do, they go crazy and they run around, and that proverb shot into my head. I thought, curiosity killed the cat. That's kind of cool. And so I wrote the song based on that.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't call it Curiosity Killed Sparky, because that
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have gone down well.
Exactly.
Now,
Yeah.
we'll talk about Little River Band going into America shortly, but at the height of your success with Little River Band, did you find it a bit surreal hearing that Australian music was starting to dominate internationally? I mean, here we are in Australia, we've got such a small, I guess, population, and there was suddenly this love affair with Australian music that was
Yeah.
starting to really take hold in America.
Yes. A lot of that is due to a DJ who worked at WAIV out of Jacksonville, Florida. He
Right.
he was just so keen on Australian music, and he would play a lot of Australian bands on his record station. out of Jacksonville, Florida, and he is largely responsible for getting Little River Band going in the States when we first came over here in 1976.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm still in touch with Bill to this day,
Right.
actually,
Right.
and as I am with a lot of the DJs from those
Yeah.
days. But yeah, the love affair, I wouldn't, it comes down to the fact that back in those days, before, say, 1975, there were not any managers in Australia who had the right connections to get their acts into whether it be England or the United States. And that's where Glenn Wheatley, he had the contacts because he'd worked in England under a man called David Joseph for a management company called the Jim Toby Organization, who early on booked David Bowie, and they had the New Seekers and people like that, Well, David Joseph sent Glenn Wheatley to LA to set up an office for him there.
Yeah.
And which is what Glenn did.
Yeah.
And but Glenn and David had a falling out, and Glenn was on his way back to Australia via London, via England, and we happened to be there as Mississippi, or we had maybe just even broken up because we were just, it wasn't going to happen in England.
Yeah.
So when when we all came back to Australia in 75, early 75, Glenn had these contacts from people in LA. And when he became our manager, he started contacting those people and started creating interest in the band for us. So basically, it was Little River Band that opened the door for other managers to get their artists into the States as well.
And it really happened, like you said, so soon after Little River Band forming. It wasn't, 2 albums and then bang, you're in America.
Yeah, no, we released the first album in September of 75, and within a year, the album was released on the Harvest label, which is one of Capitol Records labels, and we went over there and started performing.
Yeah.
It was very, very fast. Yeah. It happened very quickly.
Glenn really had a lot of insight into how the music industry really ran, didn't he?
He did, and that stemmed from his days of taking over the business affairs of the Masters Apprentices, because they also went to London and recorded a couple of amazing albums over there. But they also couldn't crack the English market, and like most bands before them, ended up breaking up as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think at that point, that was when Glenn decided to go into the management side of things.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned England, and that's an interesting approach. That a lot of Australian bands really went to England because they thought, well, if we can break it in England, then we're going to come back to Australia and we'll be famous. And AC/DC and even I was talking with Buzz Bidstrup, and he was the same. He went over to England. I'm going to make a fortune, and he ended up broke and wondering what he was going to do. And someone said, get back to Australia and join the Angels. So I think. Do you think that we tried it with the UK? It just didn't work for the most part. There were some bands that it did work, but then the US became our focus.
Well, speaking of artists who did make it in England, of course, we're talking about the Seekers. Yeah. And they worked for Little River Band. And, a solo artist, Frank Ifield, went over there and was a huge success. And, of course, in a different way, Rolf Harris was as well.
Yeah.
But not sure I understand your question.
I guess it was a period of time where we were going to England and trying to make it big, and then something happened, and our focus shifted to the US.
Yes,
in the mid-70s.
Well, but remember in those days we had Hoadley's Battle of the Sounds,
Yeah, right.
and and when whoever won that competition were given a free, voyage to England to try and make it over there, and which a lot of bands did. The Twilights, the
Yeah,
Groove,
yeah,
the Masters probably won. I don't know. I don't think they
yeah,
won Hoadley's, but um, so these bands thought to themselves, "Hey, we've got a free trip to England. Let's go and see if we can make it over there." And
yeah,
the majority of them did not. So, um, as far as the Little River Band was concerned, I think our sound was more geared towards the American sound than
yeah,
to the English sound,
yeah,
because we were a harmony-driven band, and it just a lot of American people actually didn't even know that the band was from Australia.
yeah.
They thought that we were some Southern California band, because of our harmonies
Yes.
and stuff. Um, but I think it was just a natural progression for us to try it in the US first before England,
Mm.
and then Europe as well. I mean, we toured the UK and we toured Europe as well, but we were always so much more popular
In
in
the
the
US.
States and Canada than we were anywhere else. I would say that we were probably a bigger act in those countries than we were in Australia itself.
Mm, mm. And that brings us back to that original question about, the genre and the fact that you were, like you said, you were one of the pioneers in that middle of the road rock
Yeah.
genre. That there were bands in America that were doing that style of music, like your Doobie
Yes.
Brothers and your even Toto were out there before they started recording, doing the whole session work.
Yes.
Christopher Cross. I mean, now you've come in and you've put out this sound that really defined what they were gravitating towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like,
I
well,
know.
this is us, right?
You-
You're
Yeah.
doing our music, yeah,
Well, we had a lot of admiration for all of those bands, especially the Eagles, of course, with
yeah,
their harmonies.
yeah,
And it was unreal that we got to share the stage with a lot of those
yeah,
people
yeah,
too. So,
yeah,
but
incredible.
yeah, but for us, it was. I remember going over there the very first time, um, and we were away from home for 5 months. I think
Mm,
as a band, we had such determination and ambition to make it overseas with our music, and that we really
mm,
dug in and virtually made it happen.
yeah,
Um, and of course, as within the band, we had 3, 4 different songwriters, and so there was always that variety to our music.
mm,
And I think that's what made our albums interesting to people as well.
yeah,
Like for example, um, when you listen to Air Supply, it's Graham Russell is the only songwriter for those two
yeah,
guys. But and I'm not saying that they didn't have variety in their
mm,
music; they did. But with us, it was so different because we Glenn, Graham, and I wrote in such different
mm,
ways, but yet we came together under that umbrella of our
mm,
voices,
mm, mm.
and
And,
so
and
every
I
song had a signature sound.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's any, like, knowing that, okay, well, Glenn wrote, say, Help Is on the Way, right? And
Yeah,
Graham wrote, Night Owls, for example, right? Uh,
yeah,
there's I don't think as a band that you can really go, well, I really prefer Graham's writing style, or I really prefer Beeb's writing style. It's Little River Band
yeah.
as a
It is.
collective. Yeah.
It is. Definitely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with that totally. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a particular song of Little River Band's? Could be one that you've written, or could be just one of the others wrote, that you always felt sort of deserved a bit more attention than it received.
I think. Home on Monday, I think, had it been released as a single, um, so many people still love that song to
Yeah.
this day. And it was Glenn's song mostly. I only contributed the chords to the bridge of that song, or the middle eight, as you guys call it. But I always loved Glenn's words. Glenn was so descriptive with his words. Help us on its way, or shut down, turn off,
Yes.
home on Monday. I mean, you could really, and that was a big difference for me between Glenn and John Farnham. When you hear a Glenn Shorrock song, you hear a soul coming out through those words.
Yeah.
Cool change. I mean,
Yeah. So good.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
and Graham's writing was totally different altogether, because Graham is such a romantic when he writes.
Yeah.
When he writes the songs,
But I don't think you can really say, well, that one style was favored over the other. I feel it was, Little River Band has become so iconic in their sound that the songs really blend into one, really.
Yeah. Well, like I say, the songwriters produced such a variety in the songs, but yet it just came out as Little River Band.
Yeah.
So
now, I'm going to preface all of that by saying that there was a definite change, when Glenn left, and then John came in, and you were there for a year before you said, "That's it, I'm out of here."
Yeah.
What was the reason for you wanting to say, "That's it, I'm gone"?
Well, I wasn't in favor of John Farnham joining the band, but the other guys, especially Graham had produced John's comeback album, Uncut, and he pulled Derek in on that, and I think David Briggs may have played on that. Wayne Nelson, who was the bass player in Little River Band at that time, played on John's album, and I think Graham was just bowled over with how John worked in the studio, with his voice and how he would just stand behind the microphone and try it again, which is very much Graham's way of wanting to get the perfect thing all the time. And so, it was, being a Democratic vote, I was outvoted in the decision for John joining the band. And I thought to myself, well, I'll hang in and see where it goes, And so I was there for a year and a half, and we recorded the Net album, which was the first one with John singing lead vocal, and my last album with the band. And I just got to a stage for me where, Glenn, John and I didn't really see eye to eye. And it just became a different thing for me in the band. I didn't think that John's voice had the kind of soul that Glenn Shorrock did.
Yeah.
And so,
but would any voice?
Well, actually, my wife at the time had suggested Mickey Thomas.
Right. Wow. Okay.
To be the lead singer of Little River Band, and he would have been great with the band, because he sang that Elvin Bishop song "Fooled Around and Fell in Love," and then he went on to have hits with Grace Slick and Starship, Jefferson Starplane. So and he had, wow, what a voice that guy had. He was just incredible.
I guess you don't pick that really when you're hearing him in Starship. You don't sort of go, well, yeah, he could have done Little River Band, but like you said, when with Fooled Around, you go, well, yeah, I guess I could see that, yeah.
Oh, he would have been an amazing choice for Little River Band, but anyway, that's all water under the bridge. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
So So anyway, so yeah, in 1983 is when I quit the band.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of
Yeah.
course, you and Glenn, sorry, you and Graham still, did a lot of work together, and you guys put out a duo album while you were
Yeah, we
with
did.
Little River Band.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Glenn actually was the first to do it. He released the single. He didn't release a whole album. He
yeah,
released Dream Lover, which
yeah,
was a Bobby Darin hit. And that was produced by John Boylan, who was the Little River Band's producer.
mm,
And around that time, Graham and I had so many songs that we had written that were not recorded by the band or were considered unsuitable for the band.
yeah,
We approached Glenn Wheatley and said, "Look, why don't you? We'd like to do a duo album." And Capitol Records agreed to finance the recording for us,
mm,
and we went into the studio and recorded "The Last Romance."
yeah,
Was the name of the album, and I had written a song um, a number of years earlier called "Last Romance" that was recorded by Mark Holden, and he had a hit with that song
mm.
in Australia. And we did our own version of that song.
Amazing.
But the real big hit of that album was a song called "I'm Coming Home."
Yeah, yeah. I noticed that there was, especially in that album, there were a lot of songs that really reflected your faith and spirituality in that album. Was it
Yes, it
was
did.
it something that you felt you couldn't do with Little River Band, so that's why it became part of the solo album?
No, because I'd already done that in Little River Band.
Oh, right. Yes.
On Diamantina Cocktail,
Diamantina. Yes.
there was a song called "Man on the Run,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and I can't remember. I don't think there was a song on Sleep. I always try to get one kind of spiritual driven lyric
Mm,
song on every
mm.
Little River Band album, um, because at the time, this is just my view,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but there were a lot of Christian artists at that time recording music.
Yes.
But my view was, why would you record 10 Christian songs that are only going to be heard by Christian people
Yep.
and are
Yeah.
not reaching people out of those four walls of Christianity? And
Yeah.
so I always tried to sneak in one song. Oh, I'll tell you what
Yeah.
the song was on Sleeper Catcher. It was "Light of Day."
Right.
A-
Right.
And, and so I just like to poke people's thinking, that, hey, there's a better way to live your life if you would open yourself to it.
Mm,
And so
mm.
that's where that came from. And on Time Exposure, I'd written a song called "Guiding Light,"
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
the very last song on that album. So, and that was my way of thinking about all of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, when we did the duo album, um, I was a bit more forthright
Yeah.
we recorded that song, "Into My Life,"
Yeah.
which openly talks about Jesus,
Yeah.
um, and the journey.
But I mean, songwriting is always been a personal journey, really. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're
it is.
writing a song, you're really talking about something that is happening, unless you're writing it about I'm going to create a story. You're writing about things that are actually happening to you. It could be something happening on the road. It could be something you've seen. It could be a cat,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you're not writing songs that are sharing your viewpoint, then you're not
Yeah.
really being authentic, are you?
No, unless, I mean, a lot of songs are written from fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of love songs
Yeah.
have been written from fantasy, but I've always been that kind of person that I like to write out of my own experience
Yeah.
and things that happen to me, or
Yeah.
I mean, I got a lot of song titles from just when I've been talking to people and they shot out, a
Mm.
phrase or something, and I thought, oh,
I
I've
like
got to
that.
remember that, and I would write it down.
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I had one fan here in in the States, who would always come to Little River Band shows, and I was, we were playing in her area, and I wanted to send her an invitation of, to come to the show and come see the band. And I kept getting her answering machine, and I thought, well, this is weird, and I finally got in touch with her, and I said, I've been trying to call you for quite some time. She said, these are her exact words. She said, oh, trying to get me is like nailing down the wind. And I took that phrase.
Yeah.
I thought, that's fantastic, nailing down the wind, and I
Wow.
wrote a song called that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like
So,
it. I like, Bon Scott had a little book that he used to write all of his, ideas and that in, and he'd pull from those. I think there were, songs from that he released years later that came from that little book. Do you have a similar process, a little book that you write your things down in?
not so much a book. It's just a sheet of paper in my songbook, where and I've called it possible song titles.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
like it.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah.
Now, a lot of artists talk about the emptiness that can sometimes come after the fame. I mean, you finished Little River Band, and was that something that hit you, or was your faith able to actually ground you during those periods?
I think both. I think I definitely, when I quit the band and I was sitting at home in Melbourne, it really dawned on me that I hit the wall.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've explained it to people, when you're flying along in a band and you're doing, recording after recording, world tour after world tour kind of thing, it's kind of like you become cocooned,
Yeah.
and because you're up there doing your thing, but at the same time you're kind of losing touch with ground level, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
where other people start. And that's what happened to me. It dawned on me when I quit the band that I had kept this pace up, not only just with Little River Band, but ever since I started in music with Zoot. Zoot, we're on the road all the time.
Yeah.
Mississippi, we're on the road all the time, playing those pub rock gigs. And so for the first time in my life, I was able to slow down and just really think about things.
Yeah.
And of course, my faith was a huge part of that,
Yeah.
because it really grounded me.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went on from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, there's been so many changes since then, and I look at those days where, like you said, you're going from one gig to another, and it's go, 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 go. Now it's there's a big change. Our music consumption has changed.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think that songs still have the emotional power that they once did?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't. And I think it's also the reason why so many young people, even today, especially today, go back and want to listen to the 70s music,
Yeah.
70s and 80s. That's all they like,
Yeah.
because there's a certain emotion to that music that today's music is not producing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's a different era now,
Yeah.
So
You still
and music,
listen to vinyl?
I do have a turntable. I don't listen to music all that much anymore. But if I do, I always, I don't look forward anymore. I look back.
I think I agree with you. I think it's just something when we get to our age, it's like, you know what? I think I preferred the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. And, and then sometimes I see these young guys on YouTube, and their musicality and how they can play guitar or their instruments and stuff. And it floors me how there is so much talent around, but so few avenues
Absolutely.
to get it out there.
Yeah.
You
think, imagine if they were playing like that back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
How they would have gone, incredible.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, I've got a few rapid fire questions before we wind up here. These are
Okay.
just some quick answers here. Okay, first song that made you want to become a musician.
She's Not There by the Zombies.
Oh, nice, like that. Zoot or Little River Band rehearsals? Which one was more chaotic?
Little River Band.
Right. A reason
Yeah.
for that?
Um. Well, chaotic. What do you mean by chaotic?
Like as in, everything is happening all at once.
Yes. I think both bands. We had that in both bands. It was easier in Zoot because there were only 4 of us.
Yeah.
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 In Little River Band, there were 6 of us. So
Yeah.
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 A song you wish you'd written.
Oh boy, that's a difficult one. There are too many to mention.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
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 I'm a big fan of David Crosby's songwriting.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would say if anybody's influenced me more, it would be him for sure. But as far as favorite song that I wish I had written, there have been so many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One album that everybody should own.
This may come as a surprise, but Dire Straits released an album called On Every Street.
Oh, I love that album.
That was the follow-up to, the one before it. What's the name of it? And it's so underrated.
So
and
that's
the
with
music,
Calling Elvis on it, right?
yes.
Great
Oh
album.
man, that album is too much. And I still play that one constantly to this day. I mean, that is just fantastic. But
I love that.
I've loved so many albums over the years. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that fans would be surprised to know about you.
Oh boy.
That's a
one
tough one.
thing. Yeah, it is, I don't know. Well, for a start, I'm not a very egocentric person.
Yeah.
I'm very down to earth and very family oriented.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Look,
or not,
I think you're a very open book, and I think that's what people love about you.
I'll tell you the other thing that I do think about myself. I've been in very few bands. I've been in Zoot, Mississippi. I don't count Freeze as a band.
No.
I've been in Zoot, Mississippi, and Little River Band. And whenever I commit to playing in a band with a bunch of guys, I'm very loyal to that band.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I've been in, so few bands.
Yeah. I love that. If there was one moment from your career that you could relive, what would that be?
It would probably be the show that we played at the Melbourne Concert Hall for Prince Charles and Princess Diana. That was really a great moment. That was in 1983. That was fantastic. And the privilege of meeting her was just amazing.
Oh, that would have been. Finally, after 60 years of music, and I've just got to say, I know it was 60 years for Zoot. Oh, it's probably longer than 60 years of music, but 60 years for Zoot. And last year was 50 years of Little River Band.
Yes,
right?
That's correct. Yeah.
What still inspires Beeb Birtle to keep creating?
Well, it would have to be, my passion for songwriting. Not that I'm writing so much anymore these days because, I don't have an avenue to get it out anymore.
Yes.
But I mean, to this day, it still floors me what made me, stop playing bass and pick up a guitar, and then all of a sudden I found I could write songs. I mean, these are I like to view them as being God guided.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was
It's
going to say divine inspiration.
yeah,
Then.
some
Yeah.
kind of divine thing, that happens.
Yeah.
And right now I'm in a space where I don't know what's next. I don't write as much anymore, and so I'm kind of cruising at the moment to see what avenues will open up for me. But one thing that I've really loved, and we didn't touch on this, I wrote a memoir 8 years ago in
Yes.
2017. It was published, and I found that the creative process of putting all of my thoughts and memories down in a book was as creative as writing a
Yes.
song.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoy doing that. And, people have encouraged me to maybe come out with another book, because that last memoir I wrote, actually wrote over 120,000 words, and the publisher told me to cut it down to 80. And so I had to cut out a lot of stuff. Well, I would love to come out with another book and with all of my stories in it, So that would be
There you
another
go. Part
creative avenue for me,
Yeah. Lovely. Lovely.
I'll see what happens.
Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and both Zoot and Little River Band have really been part of my growing up and my musical journey. So
Yeah.
to be able to chat with you about this has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh no, it's you're very welcome. I enjoy doing these things.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Beeb Birtles, thank you for joining us on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Shayne.
Thank
Talk
you.
again soon sometime.
Likewise. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.